сделать такое. Мы стремились сделать скромные станции, чтобы искать вот эти пути, чтобы ответить себе на вопрос, зачем мы делаем, где самое главное направление, которое является перспективным. И мы все время говорили себе, своим друзьям, нельзя так делать, как делают американцы, надо делать вот так, как мы делаем.
Every 90 minutes, NASA officials could look up at the sky and see Mir as it flew over the United States. But their own vast space station was still on the drawing board, and people began to doubt when, if ever, it would be built.
I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
1993, a new president and a new initiative. Bill Clinton took one look at the estimated $400 billion required to land humans on Mars and dropped the plan. For a while, it seemed that the space station was destined to die too. It was now 6 years behind schedule and costing $8 million a day just to keep the program up and running. But something had happened that would give the station yet another chance of survival. The old enemy, the Soviet Union, had collapsed. Russia's spectacularly successful space program was almost bankrupt. In the new era of peace between nations, the White House had an idea. Rather than write off the $8 billion they'd already spent, they invited Russia to join America in building the space station in the name of international cooperation. NASA's first meetings with their old competitors were held in secret.
The first proposal they made to us was that we could build off of their orbiting Mir. They made a presentation to us on that. We politely thanked them and told them that wasn't what we wanted to do. So they immediately proposed that we give them X number of dollars and go away for about 4 or 5 years, and they'd build us one. And we politely told them that wasn't what we wanted to do either. So then it came down to identifying their assets that they wanted to contribute to space station, the assets that we had, and trying to fit those assets into a configuration that was technically viable.
Now called the International Space Station, the project was redesigned once again. Within a few weeks, it was agreed that the Russians would provide early modules that would bring with them the crucial life support systems and propulsion for the space station and crew rescue vehicles. Gradually, the American, European and Japanese modules would be added on. The deal gave NASA key parts of the space station, which the Russians knew how to build, that the Americans were having problems making for themselves. Dan Goldin, NASA's boss, seemed ecstatic.
This is a historic moment, and I'm just very excited. Mr. Kopchev, I want to give you a hug.
Behind the scenes of this great embrace, the reality was more mundane. This is the Khrunichev Space Vehicle Assembly Factory outside Moscow. These are the engineers who've maintained the Soviet Union's continuous manned presence in space since 1987. The space program was desperate for funding, but the new collaboration with America was not what they had in mind.
И нам это обидно. Обидно то, что мы вынуждены принимать помощь. И дело не в том, что это соперник бывший или не соперник, а просто вот другая страна нам помогает, а мы сами такие умные и способные. То есть здесь есть две стороны такой. С одной стороны, конечно, мы понимаем, что американцы помогают нам финансово, но они помогают и себе тоже, мы тоже это понимаем.
Do you think the space station would ever have happened without the international cooperation?
In 1993, it didn't look like that it would. It looked to me, and I don't pay a lot of attention to politics, etc., but it did look like to me that it was in a high probability of being canceled.
So the Russians saved the bacon?
I think so.
Inside Russia's vacuum test facility, final checks are underway on the next generation of spacesuit for cosmonauts on the International Space Station. With Russia's great expertise and hardware to call upon, once the agreement had been signed, construction of the modules could begin immediately. It seemed that NASA would no longer be dependent on American contractors who were still at the design stage for some of the important space station parts. Yet American congressmen were determined that American firms would build the major parts of what many still saw as an American space station. Here in Huntsville, Alabama, NASA engineers continue to try to sort out problems with crucial parts of the life support systems planned for the American modules.
To get water or anything else into space, it costs about $10,000 per pound. And so at 10,000 pounds weight needed per year for water, that comes out to about $100 million per year per crew person.
Up to 7 people will live aboard the space station. Supplying them with water from Earth would cost $700 million a year, so NASA is working on the only alternative.
The way we are approaching that is to make use of every drop of water possible on the station by repurifying it through a system that we are developing here at the Marshall Space Flight Center.
Tucked away in a corner of a hangar is NASA's water recycling test facility. Here, volunteers exercise to simulate life on the space station. Their perspiration, the water vapor they exhale, and their urine is carefully collected, as is the water they use. It can then be recycled. NASA and its contractors have been working on these systems for over a decade. But whilst they're good at collecting the water, things aren't moving so fast on the recycling process.
We are in the preliminary design stages of that equipment. It's still on paper at this point. And we're just beginning to order the parts that we need, but we don't actually have the hardware under fabrication yet, under manufacture yet.
These are the people who design life support systems for Mir. By adopting a simpler technical approach developed over 30 years, the Russians have been able to solve many of the engineering problems the Americans still face. Here at an institute outside Moscow, they've engineered machines that can generate oxygen and filter stale air and wastewater, including urine, that function reliably in the weightlessness of space. They're especially proud of their heat-based urine water recycling technology.
Ну просто святая вода.
Когда мы приступили к этой работе, то обязательно и я, и все присутствующие обязательно первыми пили воду, которая была регулирована из конденсата серолаги, из урины, поэтому мы на себе убедились, что качество воды хорошее. А атмосфера на станции, хотя она уже эксплуатируется больше 10 лет, такая, что воздух чище даже, чем в Калифорнии.
Over the past 3 years, Boeing has independently assessed key components of the Russian recycling systems in use on Mir. They work well.
From working with the Russians, we've learned you don't have to have extremely sophisticated support equipment in order to have something that's reliable and functioning. They've had their station there for 10 years. They've had their life support system for 10 years. One thing that we've found is when they say that they have a specification, it works that way.
So why don't the Americans use the Russian life support systems on the American part of the space station?
We wanted to have a capability not only on the Russian side of the station, but a capability on the U.S. side as a way to provide additional levels of safety. For example, if the Russian system that's there were to become inoperable, then there would be a fallback by having the equipment on our side of the station. So the two kind of complement each other. But the Russian systems are very good systems, But we think that these systems that are being developed here will be even better.
At the moment, NASA is still struggling with the dynamics of separating gases, liquids and solids in microgravity in its life support systems. They also have another problem, in that the equipment that they hope to put on the space station has never been tested before in long-duration spaceflight.
This is the life support module where we're testing the life support systems for the International Space Station Laboratory module. We're actually doing tests as we speak on the air revitalization systems.
How long has this been in development?
We started work on the air revitalization systems in 1984. We've got a few problems we're still trying to work on, one of them being the mission type situations where we figure out operationally how these subsystems should work and make sure that we don't have any problems operationally when we actually fly.
Have any of these systems in here ever flown for any duration in space?
None of the ones that we have in this simulator have ever flown.
The systems that we're developing, that's true, they have not flown in space before. We are dependent on them working properly as from day one when they get there.
Do you think you meet your deadlines?
Yes, we'll meet that.
Confident of that?
Yes.
Всем нашим коллегам и в Соединенных Штатах Америки, и в Европе желаю добиться хороших успехов в создании тех систем, которые им поручены.
Even when the components are ready, the effort to build the space station will have barely begun.
Houston Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
It will take 45 flights over 5 years to assemble the giant in orbit. The astronauts involved in construction will have to spend 960 hours doing spacewalks, bolting 100 different components together.
How did it go down there? Oh, pretty darn good.
Spacewalks are about as risky as space can get. Alone, outside the spacecraft for up to 7 hours at a time, cosmonauts and astronauts are exposed to radiation and the ever-present chance of accidents.
I lost the whisk socket and it's retractable. I don't know how it came off.
A spacesuit could catch on a sharp edge. A pinhole tear could result in instant death. A hatch could jam, leaving the astronauts stranded.
As soon as you're ready, you can grab the arm and we'll be ready to move you.
As part of their cost analysis of the space station, NASA's auditors have had to assess the risks.
The estimates of risk are very high, that something will occur over a period of 5 years. I think we took a look and they said the estimates are about 92% that something will occur, either a launch slip or something that might not work in space. After all, you're now talking about over 840 hours in space, astronauts flying through space at 18,000 miles per hour, building things, 3 times more spacewalks than we've had for all spacecraft that we had, combined since Apollo to now.
And Houston, if you copy, Jeff's just working, putting the doors back together and thinks he's found a way that seems to close the gap, and we're going to try that, if that's okay.
The number of things that possibly could go wrong, from simple things like connectors not mating up properly to bigger things like a micrometeoroid penetration of a module, or space debris penetration of a module, and the depressurization that would result. There's so many things. It's a myriad number of things that possibly could go wrong. And because this vehicle is so large, involves so many complex systems, any one of those things could happen.
Hopefully it won't be the ultimate bad thing. The ultimate bad thing, God forbid, is that we could have an accident, somebody could lose their life, but that's the price of getting into space.
With so much at stake, the questions persist. What mission would be worth the ultimate price?
The explanations for why we need a space station have changed year after year. It began, of course, in the Reagan administration, and there they portrayed the space station as some sort of an R&D facility where they're turning out high-tech doodads for industry.